Hello, everybody. It's Martha McCallum here, and it's a new edition of the Untold Story podcast. And I have a very special friend with me today. Steven Melnikoff landed here on Omaha Beach behind us in France 80 years ago at the age of 24. That's right, that makes him 104. He fought with the 29th Division, 175th in the infantry, and he earned 2 Purple Hearts and 3 Bronze Stars, initially in Operation Overlord, and then here in Normandy, France, in the weeks that followed. Look at these wonderful pictures of these young men, and Steve among them. He told me about his memories from 80 years ago, what he thinks of the nation that he and others fought and so many died for, and how he thinks it's doing today.
I'm Steven Melnikoff, and I'm with the 29th Division. I was with the 29th Division, one of the D-Day divisions, and it was on Omaha Beach. And I'm originally from Rhode Island, and then my work after took me to Baltimore area. That's where I lived, out of Baltimore area.
I saw you actually. It was a few years back. You were talking to the Baltimore Ravens.
Yes.
And you went to give them kind of a pep talk.
Yes.
Right? You're a big fan. And I could see the emotion in their faces when you told them what you had done here.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what you told them that day.
Well, I just probably told them that there's teamwork involved. We came over here and we fought a very highly trained army. They defeated all the countries of Europe except Russia, and so I told them that this is what you have to do. And combat is it's not an I thing; it's a we thing, you know. And so I tell them you win by what the whole group does, not just some star or whatnot, you know. And I gave a little pep talk, yeah. And even I stood with some of those guys. Some of them weighed 100 pounds more than I did.
Well, they admired you. That was clear.
Yes.
For those who don't know your combat story, explain what you did on D-Day with the 29th Division.
Okay. I want to be sure that I am a D-Day veteran, but in the military, a division never fights with all 3 regiments. There are 3 regiments, and the general picks out who's going in. You have 2 go on the attack, and the other division is reserve. And the 116th and the 115th were the attack division from the 29th. I was in the 175th Regiment, and we were the reserve regiment on D-Day. But because we were out there a couple of miles, we had the American guns flying overhead and the other guns going at it, and they were actually, many of the people did not ever get to the beach. And I want to mention one other thing. The 1st Division was alongside. It was a 29th Division and the 1st Division on our beach, and the British, Canadian, British further down the beach. So we were the reserve division, and actually my regiment didn't go in till the next day. Why was that? Because they made all kinds of plans. We were supposed to take St. Lo in 5 days. Well, we just have pieces of land like that, and so it was not an easy thing. During that day, do you know that Eisenhower had 2 speeches? Great, you guys, good job. I'm sorry I screwed up, okay? That's what his arm. My General Bradley, late in the first day, he was getting such bad reports, he was on at the point of calling it off. That's how close it was. It was not an easy thing. Yeah, and if you go on Omaha Beach and you see that bluff up there, and people just said, I can remember one of the British guys was supposed to do the planning. He says, it's impossible. And he was right. But the general said, you got to write up a plan, and he did. So it was a very, very difficult job. It was the greatest attack on a country ever done. 7,000 ships and all those men in there. So, yeah.
So tell us how old you are now and how old you were on that day, on
Yes.
June 6th?
Sure. I'm 104 years old now, and I was old. I was in, when I entered the service, I was 23 years of age. And so,
You were old.
yeah. And they used to call me the old man. That's right. But see, I had already been away from home. I was on my own, and I worked in a shipyard. I was building ships, and it wasn't like, and anything I did, I had to look at it as an adult. I had been on my own for those years.
Were you married at that point?
No, I was not married. I didn't marry till after I came back.
So what do you remember about that day? You know, when you talk about how difficult it was and overcoming these odds and planners saying that it couldn't be done. What was in your heart? What do you remember?
Well, what I remember is we knew we had to do it, and we were picked to do it, the 29th Division and the 1st Division on Omaha Beach, because the 4th Division was going west. They had to take the Carrington Peninsula. So we knew we were coming, but I'll tell you this. I was drafted in 43, June 26th, and we went to Texas, and we went there at this place that we trained, Camp Fannin. It was a camp set up brand new prior to that camp, the opening a month or so before we got there. The infantry only got 12 weeks training, but because they knew we were going to go into this battle, we got 17 weeks training. But then after the 17 weeks, we came over to England, and I trained 5 additional months in St. Ives, and this is before we went in. And so this whole group of men, we knew after a little bit that we were going over here. So it was a cumulative kind of a thing. And so it wasn't just like, hey, tomorrow you're going to attack. No, we knew months ahead of time.
And you were just waiting for the go signal at that point.
Once we got to New York and waiting for the ship to take us over, we didn't come over on the Queen. We came over on the Ile-de-France, on January 17th.
So once you made it up the beach, and I'm sure you lost a lot of people that you knew probably on the ship, right?
Yes.
And what was that like for you?
Yeah. All right, I'll just say this. On the first day, the 29th Division and the 1st Division had casualties, 5,720. I'll say that again, 5,720 casualties on the first day. So what happened then, the casualties were mostly in the 116th Regiment or 29th Division. So they had very little fight, if any, left in them. So the 175th, my division, took the lead along with the 115 on that day. I want to say something about the 175th. Actually, the 175th is this pin. And we go back to 1774 as a British militia. That was called a Dandy Fifth, and this is what it was, 175th Regiment. And so we were along with the 175th and 115. We were the attacking divisions.
So you made it up the beach, and you were wounded a few days later.
Yeah, it was really,
What happened?
But I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
Even though it was the second day, as we get up to the top of the bluff, our captain actually was wounded. He was one of our first casualty. He was wounded in the leg, but somebody got him a little kind of a piece of stick, and he fell along. And so what happened then, we were going to move, and so we first liberated Le Cam, and we, along with the villages, went going down, and our next target was Iceni. And we liberated Iceni. It was the largest unit taken in that first, since D-Day, the 175th Regiment.
And were there people from the village there? Do you remember their response to seeing you?
Let me say this. When you're on the attack, when you're on a real attack, okay, somehow the civilians are smart enough to get out of their way. And some of these people that tell you that they were meeting them, they weren't on the initial attack. There are people that are smarter than that. They're in the basements. I'm sure they had prepared places, and all of a sudden they would disappear. But once we get past the Germans, they all would come back. They're not dumb.
No.
The Untold Story continues right after this.
So tell me about where and when you were wounded.
Yeah. I was wounded on June 17th. It was an attempt. This was the second attempt to take St. Louis. That was our target. And we were at the Elbe River, and the line went all the way back, including the British, Canadian. Everybody was moving from 5 to 5. By that time, it was probably 8 or 9 divisions. And so we got our target, and on the 15th of June, they told us. And I've got to tell you this. Before I can tell you this story, I have to tell you about hedgerows and machine guns, okay? A hedgerow, you would assume, was a hedge, right? But our intelligence was not very sharp. I don't know why I didn't send more people to find out. But a hedgerow was a hedge maybe 800 years ago. And there's that hedge, and farmers used it to separate the gardens from the pastures of the horses and the cows and whatnot, and their apple orchards. And as they farmed that land, and they cleared the land, they would throw the stones out there, they threw the debris that wasn't eatable, and over years that vegetation turned to dirt. Those hedges then turned to big roots, and the French farmers trimmed it for fuel, and they wound up, by the time 1944 came about, there were a mass of dirt 5 or 6 feet wide like that, and came up with this 5 or 6 foot high. A Sherman tank could not budge them. It could not penetrate them. And the Germans used that for their defensive position. And if you know military, when you're on the offense, the advantage is always on the defense, because they've got to hide. We very seldom saw the Germans. But we found out when they fired on us. Now, the other thing about it was, I was in a combat infantry, and the German had come up with a brand new gun. The British and Canadians and us, we were fighting with guns that were designed and built in the 30s and whatever time. They came out with a brand new gun. This gun fired at a rate of 1,500 rounds a minute. That's 25 rounds a second. That's 25 rounds. That's 1 second. That's what we had to contend with. And as we moved on that morning of the 16th, we had casualties immediately. And they talk about D-Day. I tell people the infantry has sometimes 10 or 15 D-Days in one day. It all depends how fast you go. So we did move, and we moved rapidly. And my first battalion, I was at 1st Battalion, 175th, and actually on that first day, we covered about 4 miles. It was remarkable. And the 1st Battalion was leading on a ridge, and it was labeled Hill 108. And so we had, first day we had casualties, and every time we were in the field, they would allow us in the field. They would open up with that machine gun. Then every one of us fired at the sound, because we couldn't see them. They were concealed with that hedgerow, and we just proceeded. And every time we took a field, we had casualties. And we did take, like I say, 4 miles of territory one day. And the whole thing started in our area at the Elbe River, spelled E-L-L-E. And the British had their own targets, the Canadians, you have a goal every place. And ours happened to be St. Louis. The reason for St. Louis was we were going south. And the plan was to cut off all the divisions in the western part of France from supply for the Germans across. And one of the main supply lines was St. Louis.
And you were shot during that battle? Yes.
On the next, well, I'll go start back. I was a Browning automatic rifleman. And the automatic rifle, I was the assistant. The automatic was my buddy. We were together since he was had gone. We were two together. That was a team, and we did together. Well, he was, as we were getting ready to dig in foxholes at the end of that first day, a small German squad came over and with automatic fire put the gun over the hedgerow, and he was shot and killed.
What was his name?
His name was Otto Giotis, came from New Hampshire. We were together. We were pretty much drafted about the same time, and from Fort Devens, that's where we started, and we shipped to Texas where we could get our training. Mm-hmm. And that's where I told you about the Camp Fanning training. Yeah. That was a training that was more advanced so that we could fire every single gun that was available to the combat infantrymen. And so we were together all that time, and the time in England, we danced together, we drank beer together in England, we did the whole thing. But he was my buddy, and we lost him. So the next day I became the VIR man. And the life of a machine gunner or a Browning automatic rifle is not very long in combat, because what you do is you fire at the biggest thing that's against you, and that's the machine gun. So everyone fired the machine gun, but they also at us. And so our only defense really was keeping separation, and that's what we did. And on that second day, it was late morning when we went to this next field. Mm-hmm. The Germans would let us sit about 10 or 20 yards, and they would open up, and we would not know where, but we had a feeling that they would be in one of the corners. Mm-hmm. We didn't know where. But the minute they opened up, all of our guys would go right at, everybody shot at that section. Yeah. And what would happen, we never knew, for a long time, they would take the wounded and persons that were casualties all back with them. And so we'd never know what they had. And we'd get until we were ready and they would make another hedgerow ready for us, and we would take one. That's the way we went. That day I was hit. I was shot right in the neck here by a machine gun. And I don't know how it's possible for a machine gun to only hit me once, but as he went along with his machine gun like this, he hit me, and he moved the gun over, and he fired, and alongside of me was my first lieutenant, and he was there, and he got the bulk of that, because I don't know if it was my instincts or the shot knocked me down, but I went to the ground, and he didn't, he just stood there. But we did have concealment. There was, this time of year, the rye is about a foot high, and that was, well, I don't know if it was rye or not. Right. It could have been wheat. I wouldn't know the difference. I was not a farmer. So I get in there, and I get on my back. I dressed my room with my kit, and walked by. After they moved off, I walked my way back to a medical station, and when I got there, they redressed it. They put me on a plane with a bunch of other wounded veterans, and we were flown back to England, actually to a MASH unit. You ever see the movie MASH?
Sure.
It was a MASH movie, and that's what and it was in Warwick, in England. I remember that.
Let me ask you about this place. Tell us about the Greatest Generation Foundation that you have participated with nine times to come here to Normandy.
Yes. Tim came here, and we were coming here, and he was doing this before I joined him. The way it happened is my sergeant was with him, and he passed away. And he called my home because he mentioned my sergeant. You know, Melnikoff is not a common name, and so he remembered. So he called me, and he said if I would do this. And I started that way about 9 years ago. And so in his travels here, Tim, before I did, found this place. We kept quiet about it, and because he knew it was going to be a treasure. And so when I joined him, it was still being fixed. The roof was bad, it was leaking in there, so they had a lot of major repairs, and they fixed it all up. And so now he made this place. It's beautiful. He tried to keep the fixtures old, you know, and
So, but tell everyone what this building was.
What this building was at one time, it was the headquarters of the command German in this area of the occupation, and so that they controlled this whole section from here, whether it be it's a public job or a military job. And so, as you see in Ed, it was an amateur that made that, I'm sure made those paintings. They're on the wall of those, they're all the three generals that had different jobs like our politicians do. And one of them, we saw the scratched out face, was apparently not the very nicest guy.
Yeah.
He probably was SS plus, yeah.
Yeah, there are Nazi murals on the inside of the walls in this building that was the German headquarters that were restored basically to bring them back so people can understand what this place was. But now this is a place where veterans of World War II and Korea and Vietnam travel in groups together to come here every year to Normandy. What does it mean to you to be part of that? You're the senior statesman, I think, of the group, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess I am, yes. And even more than that, probably, simply because of the attrition, okay?
Yeah.
There's not many of us left, especially combat men, yeah. And so what it means to me, I've established a mission for myself, because when I come here, when I talk to people like you, but I also talk to kids, to all people of all up and down the scale. And I especially love to talk to kids. And I know that if I talk to them, I tell them my story, what they can absorb, and if they're small and not even big enough to absorb, I tell their moms to, when they take a picture of me, they can tell them that I can remember Steve Melnikoff. They might remember Steve, and I tell them, make sure they know that, because they're going to be here to tell the story, you know, when we're all gone. Yeah.
And the garden that we're sitting in, tell us what this garden is.
Well, this garden is a place for us to relax in, and you can see in the back we have 2 monuments. We periodically, when some of our veterans ask to bring their ashes over here, some want the ashes to come here, and we have an urn that he collects them, and then we make a ceremony, and those are exact copies. No, they're not exact copies. They are the same as the one you're going to see in American Cemetery. And we have a mention, and I don't know if there's a room back there with pictures of some of his stars, yeah. And so, yeah, this is our place. We planted he takes care of the grass. We did the planting, and it's just a place for us to relax. Very comfortable rooms, especially comfortable for people that may not have the full capacity to do things. You have showers that have seats in them, and everything is first class, but made to look old. This building is very old. I understand it's probably 400 or 500 years old. I don't know, but yeah, it's an old building, and he revived it. Yeah, first class.
So, last question for you, Steve. When you think about America today, and the country that you fought for, and many of your brothers died to preserve freedom, what do you think about the United States today?
Well, I see some things that I really don't like. I see a resemblance to what was happening in 1939, 38. I was there. I'm not reading the book or something like that. I was there. And this feeling that we have, the people are so absorbed in what themselves. They're not the way we were. We volunteered. I didn't volunteer, but we were drafted, but we knew we had a mission. We did. I always tell people we're a hell of a lot tougher than you guys. Yeah, because we didn't have the conveniences. I can remember my mother lighting the gas lamp in the house. I can remember all the things that we went through. But I tell people, we had a depression, but I thought, don't be sorry for us. But I guarantee you, when I was a kid, I had a lot more fun than your kids have. Because you know what it was? We were independent, and they let us plan our games, play our games, get messed up, it didn't matter. Yeah. So, but now everything's so, you know. We played football. We didn't have padding all. So we had a generation that because you had to walk to school, they put overshoes on you, they say, go to school, that's it, and back. And so there's nobody, they worked, we were independent. And I think that was a generation that we able to do things because they were so, we're mostly factory workers. And I'll say one other thing. I'm 104, I'm in pretty good health. I say I'm okay. But you know something? Because we were poor, we ate basic foods. We had rye bread, and we had very little meat because it's too expensive. A lot of vegetables. Now the doctors tell you, hey, you're supposed to do that. We didn't have white bread because it's more expensive than dark bread. And now it's going far worse. So when I say we're tougher, it was just that we were forced to be tougher because we had to walk. Parents walk to work, and I hope that they'll be able to do something like our generation if it becomes necessary. And I see things on the edges that are sort of reminding me of that period.
So, last question this time, I promise. Your family immigrated from Ukraine originally. And when you say that you see things that remind you of 1938, what do you mean?
What I mean by that, we have people right now, I can see, and we all ought to see, that there's sort of a separation from people. The authoritarian people and the people who want freedom. I see that they're sort of starting to take sides, and sort of the same way then, like when the British man went over there, Chamberlain. Yeah, he believed them when he said, but we weren't smarter to know that they were rearming themselves already, and that just gave more time to do what you are. I see semblances of that creeping up on us, and I'm just hopeful that we have a generation that will do what they have to do. And I worry that they're so consumed with themselves and other things that they just they're confused.
Well, Steve Melnikoff, thank you very much. It's really an honor to talk to you, sir.
Okay.
And you have such an amazing reservoir of knowledge about the country, and we thank you so much for your service and for freeing Europe, being part of the effort that freed Europe and kept this beautiful village free for the future and for prosperity. So I want to thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Great to be with you.
Okay.
Thank you,
all
sir.
right.
That's our podcast for today for The Untold Story. I'm Martha McCallum. I'll see you next time. You've been listening to The Untold Story with Martha McCallum. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Make sure to rate and review. For more podcasts, go to foxnewspodcast.com. Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.